Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. So this video is going to be a continuation of how to be a game master. We're going to go over how to design an encounter. This is not going to handle any of the technical aspects that are in D&D or Pathfinder. This is more of just off the cuff designing an encounter for an adventure. So we'll say the party's first level, so this will be for a brand new party. We're going to have few bad guys for them to fight. Let's say I got 5 players. I want to have at least 3 to 4 bad guys. And when I design this, if one of the players doesn't make it, I can always take a bad guy away. It might affect the total experience of the encounter as far as experience points, but it wouldn't change the encounter as far as how difficult it could be for them, because they'll still outnumber the enemies. If, say, I had four of these little guys there and they had 5 players, that's 5 attacks they can make in a turn, and the enemy can only make 4. So when you lose a player and you take away an enemy, now you got 3 enemies and 4 players, so they still have an extra attack. So we'll go with a common one that most people are familiar with. We'll say kobolds or goblins. So we'll make the encounter with them. So they're going to be at least 3 of them. We are going to either use their stats out of whatever game system you would want to use for this, or you could just say what's the low end of easy difficulty to hit, and set that as the DC for everything that's going on in this encounter, which you could take out of index card RPG. It's a pretty cool concept. We'll cover that in more detail in one of these videos. So we'll say, being a kobold, their AC is like 13. Now, a kobold, they're pretty fast. Kobold's bonus to hit, we'll give them a +1, or we'll use the stats out of the book. So in the case of, say, a D&D related game, Pathfinder, D&D, Starfinder, we would roll a d20 and add their 1 to see if we hit one of the players. Do the kobolds have ranged weapons? I would determine that ahead of time. If not, they all have melee weapons of some sort. Tiny spears, maybe clubs, possibly daggers, maybe even swords. Either way, I'd give them the appropriate damage, or I'd just say it does a d4. So it doesn't need to be super complicated. In a D&D game, the average player's hit points is close to 10. Some of them's beyond it, others are just close to it, unless they have a low constitution bonus. So you could assume that the kobold would have to hit them 2, maybe 3 times to drop the average player. And that's assuming the kobold didn't roll terribly on the damage. So from there, I got to figure out what all's in this room, because it's pretty bland if it's just a room with some kobolds, or if it's just an open area with some kobolds. So I would pick some sort of dungeon dressing to add to this. We'll assume we're in a dungeon, a cave, or a abandoned building. So to add to this, we'll put a table up against the wall. Maybe there's food on the table. And then we'll add a couple of chairs, of course, and maybe a statue. And the statue isn't related to the kobolds. Maybe it's a statue of somebody that owned this place before. Or maybe it's of a deity that the kobolds don't worship. And then we could add a few other trinkets, maybe a little bit of treasure scattered around. Something that wouldn't be useful to the kobolds. So if it's not a weapon, if it's not a spell, if it's not a magical item, they probably won't have it in their possession. Now, if it is one of those, give it to the kobolds and have them use it in the encounter against the party. And that's our kobold encounter. So why would the party want to fight these things? Are they exploring a dungeon, or are they here specifically to fight these? If they're here specifically to fight these, maybe the kobolds have a prisoner. So you could have a child tied up in this room. And then the party has 2, maybe 3 options when they enter the room. They could rescue the kid and just make a break for it. They could fight to the death with the kobolds, then rescue the kid. Or they could distract the kobolds in some fashion, get the kid and run, like the first one, except maybe less combat. And those are their options. That I would award them experience after the actual event of fighting them, and give them whatever treasure would be appropriate. And if this was part of a bigger dungeon, I would add a room or 2 off of this, maybe, or a hallway or 2 off of this, and then design the next room. So that's how I would quickly design an encounter, especially one for a level 1 group. Hopefully this will be helpful to most game masters or most new players that want to be game masters. Well, until we all game again, guys.